Welcome to Take Up Your Space, the podcast where healing meets identity and where your story of trauma doesn't get the final word. I'm Tammy Bruni, and my passion is to help you find freedom on every level: psychological, spiritual, physiological, emotionally. Too many of us shrink back under the weight of stress, pain, and past experiences. But you were created to take up space, to walk boldly in your kingdom identity, and live fully in the purpose God designed for you. Each week we'll explore practical tools, biblical truths, and the science of healing so you can step out of survival and into wholeness. This is a safe space for your nervous system, your spirit, and your story to be seen and restored. If this resonates with you, make sure you hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. Share this podcast with a friend who needs encouragement, and visit lionsarise.org for resources, my trauma healing manual, online programs, and more ways to connect. Together, let's take up space. We were always meant to do this. Welcome back to Take Up Your Space. Today we're talking about something that many people carry without realizing it. Feeling responsible for how everyone feels. I'm sure we can identify with that. So today's topic is then why you feel responsible for everyone's emotions. Maybe this sounds familiar. You feel anxious if someone is upset. You try to fix people's emotions. You walk on eggshells around people. You over-explain something to avoid misunderstanding, and you feel guilty when someone is disappointed. And if someone is unhappy with you, it feels almost unbearable. So today we're going to explore why this happens, because this isn't just personality, right? This is often a nervous system pattern that's rooted, once again, in attachment and early experience. And then there's also a spiritual side to this, right? So learning the difference between compassion for people and over-responsibility. There's a difference. So let's just look at emotional responsibility versus emotional sensitivity. There is a healthy gift called empathy. Many of us that work with people are empaths. And empaths do feel a lot of things very deeply. They're intuitive, they're sensitive to their environments. So it's a lot harder for an empath to navigate this if they don't have good boundaries. But let's just come back to the gift of empathy. Very often, many people move beyond the empathy into something else, right? So emotional responsibility sounds like, if they're upset, it must be my fault. I need to fix this. I can't relax until they're okay. And maybe you've experienced this in your childhood home when you had parents that were upset. Maybe you've experienced it with family members. Maybe you've experienced it with friends. And then this creates anxiety, people pleasing, over-functioning, right, in certain areas, and a loss of boundaries, right? We don't have those good boundaries in place. Your nervous system is scanning the emotional environment and trying to stabilize it. Why? Because at some point, emotional stability around you may have felt like survival. Right? Again, we're coming back to those childhood responses. So what are some of the childhood roots? The pattern develops as a child grows up in an environment where the parent was emotionally unpredictable. There was anger, stress, or withdrawal. The child had to read the room. The child became the peacemaker, or the child felt responsible for a parent's emotions. This is sometimes also called parentification or emotional role reversal. So the nervous system learned, if others are upset, I'm not safe. If I keep everyone calm, I'll be okay. So now as an adult, when someone is quiet and they're not saying anything, there's the anxiety. If someone is disappointed, there's guilt. If someone is upset, there's an urgency to fix it. So your body, once again, is reacting to an old survival pattern. So let's look at an example. So imagine someone sends you a short text. Okay. Immediately your mind goes, or maybe the thumbs up, right? The thumbs up can mean a lot of things. So immediately your mind goes, are they upset? Did I do something wrong? Your body starts to feel tightness, you start to feel anxiety, and then the urge to clarify, right? You now want to fix. So you send, is everything okay? Did I upset you? Even when nothing is wrong, right? And this happens often, especially nowadays with WhatsApp. We can't always detect the tone of something. And so there's a lot of miscommunication that happens around WhatsApp messages. So your nervous system is trying to restore that emotional safety again. So let's just look at the spiritual dimension. This pattern often comes from a good heart, right? From caring deeply for others. But the word shows us a very important truth. You are called to love people, right? You're not called to manage their emotions. So Galatians 6 verse 5 says, each one should carry their own load. Jesus cared very deeply for people, but he did not take responsibility for everyone's reactions. What was the result? So some people were offended, some people walked away, and a lot of people misunderstood him. Right? Sound familiar? But he still stayed aligned with the truth. Proverbs 4 verse 23 says, guard your heart. So this means to maintain emotional boundaries. It doesn't mean shut people out. It just means to be watchful over those boundaries. Romans 12 verse 18 says, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. It doesn't say make everyone peaceful, right? But do your part, right? That's what it's saying. So let's just look at the nervous system healing. So what does healing mean in terms of your nervous system? It means teaching your body, right? Other people's emotions are not danger. Obviously, we're talking about general situations. Often when there are situations with abuse, especially physical abuse, yes, that person's emotion, the anger, is danger, right? But we should be putting things in place to get ourselves out of those situations, right? So I'm just talking in general here. So what can we do to support this healing? So the first thing is to separate ownership, right? And I like to always bring this in when I talk about boundaries, right? Ask what is mine and what is theirs, because very often we can get very emotionally meshed with people, and then we find it very hard to separate our emotions from theirs. And this often happens in chaotic family relationships, or where you've grown up in a home where everybody's emotions affect the other person's emotions. So same with boundaries. We say, what is your stuff and what is my stuff, right? There's got to be that separation. And then we have to learn to tolerate discomfort, right? So let somebody be disappointed with you without fixing it immediately, right? We must be able to sit with those uncomfortable emotions, because sometimes if we sit longer with something, it actually just flows through and it dissipates, right? I always explain this when we're dealing with emotions, that see it like a leaf on a moving stream, and you're letting it flow in and flow through. Remember, emotions are energy in motion. That's the definition of it, which means they're moving. So they get stuck in our bodies when we hold on to that. So if we can just give ourselves like space to sit with that, it's a lot easier for that emotion to flow through without it getting stuck. And then once again, we have to ground our bodies. So again, it's the slow exhale, relax your shoulders, because tension builds up. So you have to just, again, come back to your body and be conscious of what's happening in the body, and then remind yourself that I'm safe, even if they are uncomfortable, right? So those uncomfortable emotions, it doesn't mean you're unsafe. It just means you're uncomfortable, right? So you got to sometimes say that to yourself, because your own voice is quite comforting to your body as well. So if you've been carrying everyone's emotions, you've likely been living in survival, not just kindness, right? But healing means that we have to shift from I must keep everyone okay to I can care without carrying everything, right? This is emotional maturity. This is how the nervous system heals. And this is also spiritual alignment, right? To come into alignment with what the Word of God says. Because your peace cannot depend on managing other people's reactions. You will never have peace, right? Choice theory says that the only behavior we can manage is our own, right? So anything we can control is how we respond. So the more your nervous system learns this, the freer your relationships are going to become. So I will see you in the next episode. This episode of Take Up Your Space is brought to you by the Take Up Your Space healing programs. If you're ready to go deeper, my self-help manual has been developed into a full course to guide you step by step through healing on a psychological, spiritual, and physiological level. And if you feel called to help others, I also offer a coaching pathway and facilitator training so you can bring this message of freedom into your community. You can learn more and find the right program for you at lionsarise.org. Remember, you were created to take up your space.